Hi, everyone. Thanks for joining the Small Business Update with Christy Ferrantella. Today we got Julian Sear, and we had scheduled Dylan Fernandez, our state representative, and Julian, our representative for the Senate. Dylan couldn't make it today, so we are going to have Julian with us, and he's on another phone call. He's going to be joining us any minute. And so we're hopefully here going to talk about anything and everything with small business relief. And so until Julian gets here, we're going to talk to Christy about everything that's happened in the last 7 days since our last meeting. Oh, there's Julian right there. This is our new world, everyone.
Hi, Julian.
Hi there.
Wow, Julian, that is an amazing beard. I've never seen you with that long of a beard.
Thanks.
I like it.
When in, I guess it meets the moment, right?
Right. So thank you for coming. This is Julian Sear, our representative for Senate for Nantucket. And I was just introducing us, Julian. We're here to talk about small business relief. And Christy and I have been doing this on Facebook Live for about 2 weeks. And we did this a week ago with Megan Blair Valero and Karen McCumber. And so we're really excited to have you here to tell us what's going on in the legislation, like what's in process, what are you talking about? What are you hearing out there from your other constituents? And so we have a million questions for you. So what's coming down the road? We can start with that.
Sure. So first I would say there's a lot of answers we don't know. That this is a profoundly difficult time for islanders and Cape Codders, and so many of us make our lives and our livelihoods through small businesses. My family owned a small business, a restaurant for 30 years. I grew up in that, as do most islanders and most Cape Codders. And there's a lot of unknowns and a lot of uncertainty, particularly given, when we're going to be able to open things up. The governor's current executive order goes through May 4th, but that will be extended. I think at best, we're going to be having a muted season. So there's a whole host of concerns and considerations. From a state level, we have focused in several areas. From a legislative perspective, we moved quickly to pass one unemployment piece of legislation that was signed into law to really expand benefits to folks, to remove requirements for certain weeks. And then a second bill was passed by the Senate to further expand unemployment. There's been a number of legislation that actually, Christy and Jason, you'll be familiar with this with your other hats as select board members, in the sense that we've been giving municipalities more flexibility. And so there's been a host of there, but the actual financial programs currently that provide support for small businesses are federal programs that are not necessarily flowing through the state; they're actually flowing through banks. And so often, whether it's the payroll protection program or the PPP is the new acronym we've all been learning, that applies to your bank. So depending on who you're banking with, I've heard larger banks have actually been quite have not been processing them as much because they're concerned about liability. Our local banks, I think, first didn't understand the program, and there was some concerns about seasonal businesses not qualifying. That is not the case. Seasonal businesses can qualify, and actually in legislation, Senator Warren and Senator Markey fought to make sure that it wasn't the payroll snapshot that we were looking at wasn't just February 2020, but you could basically within the last, I think, year or 9 months, take your best quarter that you could use. But still, it really depends on who you're banking with. I actually heard from a constituent today who uses an online bank and has gotten really nowhere. So that's where the initial set of help is coming. But there's sort of a lot more to come. I mean, this is really sort of a moving target. We don't yet know when we're going to be able to open up. I was speaking with an emergency, a doc friend of mine who's an infectious disease doctor at MGH. And he really said, he's like, it's not, if anything is known about this, like this doesn't end cleanly or clearly. And so I think that, as we're working to get back up and running, that may take a while. And so that means not great things for our employees, and that means not great things from our employers.
What do you think about what's your gut telling you on the next round from Governor Baker? With you just said they're going to probably extend it to at some level.
Yeah, I mean,
restaurants still curbside. Is there too many unknowns?
So I think what we'll have will maintain, right? So restaurants and food service that's done curbside or takeout. I expect those provisions would stay. But we really have, if you look in the case of Wuhan, they essentially had an 11-week shutdown. They also are operating in an authoritarian government where you're able to put certain things in place that we wouldn't or probably likely maybe even shouldn't do in an open society. So just from an 11-week count, right? If you take an 11-week count from when this started in the middle of March, we're looking at the end of June. I think that it's safe to say that the order will be extended for a number of weeks. I think we don't know how. Also, that Massachusetts has joined with a number of other northeastern states in working collaboratively to figure out when we can open up. Unfortunately, we just can't rely on the federal government, particularly the leadership of the federal government, to give us evidence-based recommendations. And so anyway, Massachusetts being part of this pack, we'll be working collaboratively with other states in the region, as well as the West Coast states to determine when it's safe to open up. This represents about a third of the American economy. So it's a pretty substantial block of states. And I'm glad Massachusetts is a part of it. So I think we don't know, if we're able to open up at least a little bit by July 4th, I mean, that may well be a win. And I know that's very sobering, particularly for, our communities who, so many of us make our lives in that precious few, 8 weeks, 12 weeks, that season. I think it's hard in, look, April and May, and even sometimes June can be hard anyway. But really, July and August is where the bulk of particularly our seasonal businesses make almost all their revenue. And I think we just don't know. I think it's safe to say that we'll have a muted season at best.
Julie, what do you think? What has Massachusetts done right? What have we been leaders in from a state level? What are you proud of, saying like, look, we did this and this?
So, I mean, first of all, I think we're in the middle of this, and no one. This is so serious that no one should be patting ourselves on the back. I think where we've done a good job, this contact tracing program that the state has propped up, working with an organization called Partners in Health, which actually does global health work. That they have led the response in Ebola and another emerging and infectious diseases in pretty rough spots in the world. They're actually standing up a contact tracing program, meaning when someone receives a COVID-19 positive test, that they're doing a whole public health process where they contact every single person you came into contact with. That level of really aggressive contact tracing really makes a difference in containing particularly new infections, and especially in a world where maybe things open up a little bit, but we're really trying to get a handle on and watching if new cases are occurring. That will be really critical. I think that's really important. I think closer to home, the Cape and Islands have been able, from my vantage point, have been able to prepare for this better than I expected, and better than other regions. And I have a vantage point on this from a healthcare perspective because I serve on all the healthcare committees. I also serve the Senate has a working group on COVID-19. I'm a member of that working group. And we're a place that's used to working together. This is particularly true on Cape Cod, which is a county government. The towns are all used to kind of working together. We've been able to get a lot of things done that I didn't expect we would. And even on Nantucket, I think the leadership we've seen from the hospital, the town, folks really stepping up and also making some pretty tough decisions that affect people's livelihoods, but that protect public health. That is something I think that we've been appropriately aggressive about and will need to continue to be aggressive about. But I mean, broadly, I think it's too soon to it's too soon to say what's truly going well. I think we're going to know a lot more by the end of, not this week, but by the end of next week. By the end of next week is sort of, this week and next week is the window we're projecting when the surge will occur. And so I think that data will give us a better sense of what's going on. The risk that we have, in this neck of the woods on the Cape Islands, but particularly if you're on an island 26 miles out to sea, that will experience an influx, a population influx, even if the status quo remains, is that you're very vulnerable to have an uptick in cases occur, even after we're opening things up more broadly. And so that's a real concern for Nantucket in particular.
So you talked a little bit about what has already passed. Is there anything coming down the line specifically focused on small businesses or the Cape and Islands?
So there's we've been batting back and forth a moratorium on evictions and foreclosures bill that'll hopefully get done this week. There's a second round of municipal bills. There's been some talk of legislation for providing assistance to businesses who don't qualify for federal support. The most ready example of that is if you're a marijuana dispensary, you're not getting federal help. And I think we're trying to get a sense of what sort of the supplemental, what that need is. It's a bit of a moving target, one, because we've seen a lot of federal money come in and we're trying to account for what that is. I think also, we're just not sure of what actually sort of assessing need. I think that the way that the federal unemployment expansion was crafted is such that in a way it almost incentivizes you to encourage you to have your employees get laid off and collect unemployment. We didn't take a path like the UK and other nations did around really trying to basically bolster payroll and sort of just direct money, send money directly to to businesses small and large to keep people employed. But I think for us, the effects of this are just starting. And so I actually, the pain in this is going to be, it's not just during this sort of acute public health crisis, but through the season. And I think that's just kind of the lens I'm trying to view this through, because I think, I think unfortunately, I think there's a lot more pain to come. We also at a state level, we're a little limited in the sense that we can't deficit spend. So we're gonna have there was a revenue hearing today. We're probably gonna have about, I think they estimated a $4 billion revenue shortfall in the next fiscal year. We had a $43 billion budget, so that's pretty significant percentage. We also have, we are better prepared than we could be. We have a $3.3 billion in the state's rainy day fund, which we'll tap into. But as we look to craft a budget and make those sort of decisions, it's going to be tough. And I think I want to get a really good sense of sort of what the need is. So first, getting people to apply, getting people through the existing programs we have. If they're not able to get through, we're not able to get them, figure out, all right, what else does this need to look like? We've got a lot of folks who make their lives as independent contractors, or they essentially file their taxes through 1099s. The good news is there's support for that. Unemployment will be part of unemployment. The not great news is it's not going to be until April 30th until that application is propped up. And I also worry too, in a seasonal economy, a lot of people make their living with multiple jobs. A lot of people make, their lives maybe sometimes not all their income is reported, let's just be honest. And so truly, sometimes people make a good deal of their support their lives on our islands and here on the Cape by doing the shuffle, right? Renting out their house. Well, if no one's coming to rent out your house, how do you capture that as lost revenue? So a lot of issues that are on our plate.
One question from somebody that's on the YouTube chat. What is the status of the business interruption bill that will require insurance companies to pay on those claims?
So that's a bill that's been filed, and it's a good idea. There's some problems with the bill, the way it's crafted. So it used a mechanism that they employed during 9/11. Essentially, that basically sort of like changed the policy to include sort of a catastrophic loss, which is like a good thing. We got to figure out a way how to finance it. So a bunch of people have been in with me about the bill. I've talked to Jamie Eldridge about the legislation, and it's something that's being looked at. We are conducting all of our business through what's called unanimous consent. So we have to get every single senator to agree on every single policy issue, so that we're basically passing legislation, what's called an informal session, where you only have one or two members who's in the chamber. And we have to do that for public safety purposes. But it does mean the policy making, you have to reach unanimous consent. And so that can be pretty difficult. So that's a bill like I'm aware of. I'm broadly supportive of it. There's some challenges specifically around how do we, like who actually sort of pays for it, because there's basically it changes the criteria for how people for what an insurance company can reimburse for, not reimburse for, but basically it includes like catastrophic. There's a rider in an insurance policy. It's like we're not going to cover the apocalypse. So this bill essentially says like this is the apocalypse. You have to cover this, and then the insurance company is going to be recouped and reimbursed. And that mechanism piece is what has to be ironed out.
Thank you. Another question.
But I've heard a lot from a lot of folks on it, and I think broadly it makes sense for restaurateurs and other folks who that's really their only safety net is through insurance, through that sort of insurance, business interruption insurance. Yeah.
Do you think that this might be for Christy too? Can jump in on this. Do you think it will expand the 8-week period for the PPP loans to be used past June 30th, so restaurants will benefit from it? Anybody know that?
I don't know that. It's a good question. We can find out.
Yeah, I haven't heard. I have heard that they're looking at expanding the program, giving it more funding. And I think if we continue with a stay-at-home, stay-in-place regulation, then I think they will be considering passing something that would extend it past June 30th. I know that's one of the most difficult things facing, seasonal restaurants is they're starting to get approved for the PPP loan and they can't get the health inspection to actually open.
Another issue is you can't pay foreign workers through PPP, which is a huge part of our business's payroll. That also raises a whole other challenge from a workforce perspective. Are we even going to be able to get H-2B and J-1 workers? I would argue unlikely in the real short, immediate term, but that's another wrinkle. I think the best bet is to try to work this in the second authorization for additional resources and make sure those provisions are in there. And we'll flag that for the congressional delegation.
Another question from Patrick. Julian, will the state be limiting restaurant occupancy after the stay-at-home order?
So I think that's an example of something that is a likely scenario where if we're opening up, there may be certain precautions or safeguards that are taken around occupancy of certain spaces. The question really though falls to enforcement. Who enforces that? Likely would fall to the local municipality. And of course, under the executive order, if the municipality feels they can't enforce it, then they can also ban that activity. That's actually how the construction ban is occurring on Nantucket. So I think it's a likely scenario. I think we have to we just have to spend a lot of time thinking about how do we open up and how do we open up safely and what does that look like. And I think that's going to be, this is not going to be a scenario where, we get an all clear and you turn on a light switch and everything's back. The executive order also includes a prohibition on leisure accommodations, so hotels, motels, rentals, Airbnbs. I expect that will linger, and we may, from a public health perspective, that may be extended further than other provisions. I think there's a real concern about sort of leisure-based travel, particularly coming to communities like ours, and what that could mean from a health impact. Of course, leisure-based travel is also how so many of us make our livelihoods. So it's a bit of a double-edged sword, and it's a bit of a tough call.
What do you think the data and information that state officials rely on to do that pro-safe, pro-business balance? Right, because we can be pro on both, but is it really just let's get through this next potential surge next 2 weeks and then kind of see from there? So
I think that the immediate focus, of course, is on this surge, which requires a tremendous amount of resources. My expectation is that that the executive order will be extended beyond May 4th for several weeks. I think that almost feels like it's a given. And then I think you begin to look at data. You begin to look at how I mentioned the contact tracing before. How robust is that program? You begin to look at certain provisions. I think also the state has really deferred to federal guidance around what's considered essential services, and I suspect they'll continue to do that. So there's consistency. But I think that from an indicator perspective, the good news for us is that there has not yet been a wide outbreak on the island, so that does not seem to have happened. I think you're on day 10 without any new cases. So those are good indicators. I think the challenge for us is that we've got a really fragile community that is going to experience that has experienced a bit of a population influx and is going to likely experience a little bit more of an influx when, if anything, is sort of opened up, or if even as people are feeling a little safer. We're just going to see that with people coming in second homes. What we're working on actually with the chamber on Nantucket, and also on the Martha's Vineyard Chamber and the Cape Cod Chamber, with Martha's Vineyard Hospital, Nantucket Hospital, with Cape Cod Healthcare, and then ultimately with all the towns, is to try to get some sort of uniform guidance to people who may consider coming here, whether that's second homeowners, whether that's seasonal workers, whether that's potential visitors. And I think making sure we put out accurate, consistent information and guidance that if people do choose to come, one, they need to take extreme caution and should think twice about it currently in the current status. But then, two, if they do end up coming, particularly seasonal workers and people coming to second homes, the need to quarantine for 14 days to get all your supplies before you come. There's added hurdles when getting to a place is by via ferry, which is in the case of you folks on the island. So all those pieces are being looked at. But we're in it for the long haul, and the people I talk to who are epidemiologists and healthcare providers, also expect that this isn't just going to be a one and done, that we're likely going to see flare-ups and outbreaks that'll happen again until there's really a vaccine or we reach herd immunity.
I have a question on human and health services, because that's your world, and you have a great focus on that, and you're involved with it. As as we keep going through this, more and more needs are going to be it's going to increase, right? Food, shelter, rent relief, mental health. I think we all know, some of us know the stats of every time unemployment goes up 1%, suicide, domestic violence, addiction, all those things rise as well. With the shortfalls that the state's going to have, will our nonprofits like Fairwinds and A Safe Place, will they still be able to get the grants in the next 6 to 12 months? Do you have any idea? I know they're heavily dependent on the state grants and funding.
So it's an excellent question. I think we will see budget cuts, likely across the board. Hopefully we'll see the federal government, again, because we can't deficit spend, hopefully we'll have the federal government step in and help really buttress these services. On the healthcare side, most of this, a lot of this does flow through the Mass Health Program. And I do expect that healthcare and public health dollars will rightly be prioritized. But I think that, for contract-based services, these contracts are 3, 5, 10 years, but they're going to be called into, they may have to be revised due to funding shortfalls. I think that may be the case. It really depends how big of a hit this is to our revenue, and what does the federal support look like. In the healthcare space, I think there's more likelihood that we're going to get more support there than in other areas. Say environmental stewardship and preservation would be something I expect would probably get less support and funding, given it's not explicitly pandemic related.
Just to backtrack, when you said it's most likely that we're going to be extending the governor's ban through May 4th, do you think there'll be a review of what essential businesses are and maybe looking at curbside delivery for some of the retail, or do you think things will become more strict as we go into an extended ban?
So I think I think ultimately, as we're opening up, right, like that's what sort of opening up safely looks like, where, all right, there's curbside service at certain retail, or a limited restaurant occupancy is, it has to be half of what it is, and there has to be certain provisions and safeguards. I expect all that will be on the table. It's the timing of it that's uncertain. I don't expect the essential services order to become more restrictive, but I think folks should operate under the assumption that that'll continue for some time, and then you would see a gradual opening up. But I should caution that speculation on my part, and I think we're really trying to figure out what that looks like and what that looks like and when that is. And I suspect it will be done in concert with our sister states, our neighboring states. There's a real strong, again, the states essentially needing to step in because of the failure of the federal government.
Just another question. Last time I got to see you in person, you were giving an update from the Restaurant Association from the state. Is there anything going on there? What are you guys working on or discussing?
So this is in reference to the Special Commission on Restaurant Promotion, and we actually were finalizing our report just before this happened, and then this COVID-19 not railroaded all that, but put all of that on a big pause. The good news is that there's $2 million already set aside to support restaurants, and hopefully that will now mean COVID-related needs. I think also getting promotions going to be really important for us when we do get back up and running, whether that's for this summer or for the summer of 2021. Massachusetts supporting entities like Nantucket go promote us in the global marketplace. I think we spend about $10 million a year on tourism promotion, which in a $43 billion budget is pretty paltry. But no, the commission we've hit the pause button because everyone is focused on responding, whether that's on the government side, whether that's you're a restaurateur, and you're either trying to stay open and stay afloat, or working things out while you're shut down.
Julian, we have a question on testing. Since testing everyone is key, what steps are being taken to increase mass testing for our area, Cape and Islands state?
So there's no sort of specific Cape Islands based testing agenda. Actually, we were able to get sort of ahead of the curve. So one of the first places that had Drive-through testing was through Cape Cod Healthcare. Nantucket Cottage Hospitals, I've heard, have had all the tests they've needed. The question, though, gets at sort of basically mass testing or sort of testing on demand, both for COVID-19 and also ultimately for the antibodies. There's I have like no specific update. The focus now is honestly getting testing into nursing homes and skilled nursing facilities, assisted living facilities. About half of the deaths that we've seen in Massachusetts have been from folks in skilled nursing facilities, which is really tragic and awful. And so now the push in this moment is around getting basically mobile testing assets deployed through the National Guard to all those facilities. But you know, I think ultimately the goal, and the sooner we're able to provide testing on demand and also antibody tests when those are available, that's also going to help us get back on our feet and really determine when things can open again.
Another question here. It's related to, is there any potential state funding that can underwrite things, for example, using hotels with private rooms passed for quarantine locations? Can that be underwritten by the state, or safe housing options?
Yes, that's being done, and there's two mechanisms to do it. In larger locations, the state is actually setting up these hotels, or essentially isolation hotels, where either people who are homeless or housing insecure, or need to be isolated from family members, are able to stay. And then there's also, because we're in a federal disaster, there's a 75% reimbursement for FEMA for those related activities as well, if the municipality is doing on it. We've worked directly with Nantucket, and we've also have plans and actually in operation on the Cape and on Martha's Vineyard. So that's all moving forward. The trick is going to be figuring out how long that's needed to continue.
I know Dylan couldn't join us today, but do you have any updates that you could provide on behalf of him on what the House is working on?
I mean, I would just say that, you know, we work, very much invert, and the update you're getting from me is the update you'd get from Dylan. Some other things that we're working on that are island specific. The financial solvency of the Steamship Authority is likely going to become a big issue. Their ridership is 15% of what it normally would be right now for this time of year, and similar numbers on the High Line. That loss is substantial. They're the lifeline, literally. Not just the tagline, they are the line. It's like the only highway in and out. I guess, I suppose, unless you're in the jet set class. So we're going to be looking for that support. There's several other bills that are pending around liability for healthcare providers. We're looking at, and there's a number of other pieces as well. But if you get an update from Dylan, you're getting information from me, and vice versa. Our teams work very closely together.
Question from Michael. When you said the stay-at-home order will be extended, are you projecting it staying in place for another month until June 4th?
Yeah. So it's all conjecture, right? It's all educated guesses. I think it's safe to say that the order will be extended, and as I said, it'll be a matter of weeks, right? But weeks could be several, and weeks could be many. We just don't know. And I think what's important is that they will continue as long as we need them to, from a public health perspective. And I think the alternative is unfortunately not an option, even though that means so much pain for employees, employers, almost for everyone. Particularly in a seasonal place, like Nantucket, where we're in the business of welcoming people, and when you can't welcome people because of the pandemic, that makes it really difficult.
Christy, we've got a couple minutes left here. We try to keep it around 40-45 minutes. Is there any updates on the EIDL loans, the PPP loans? Have you seen anybody actually get an EIDL loan here? Are people getting the PPP notifications?
Yep. So we have received word that a lot of Nantucket businesses are starting to receive their approvals from the banks. I did receive confirmation from a business that they actually received the funds for the PPP loan. So they're able to get their employees back hired and getting paychecks. We also have heard that the idle loans have started up and the advancements are starting to show up in people's bank accounts. So it's been a slow process. It's been a frustrating process for small businesses, but it is looking like the relief is starting to come through. Oh, Jason, you're still on mute.
Sorry. I do this every day. The guy would get the mute part down. Anything else that's happened in the last week with unemployment? Anything that's happened on the island?
I know with the PPP loans, they opened up last Friday for 1099 and contractors. So that application is estimated around the country, 23 million workers will be applying. So that started this past Friday. So they'll probably see a week delay, similar to what other small businesses saw. I know Julian touched on it, hearing that PPP loans, you're not able to use your foreign workers to calculate the loan amount. So that was something that really has hurt small businesses for Nantucket. So, the chamber is continuing to look for ways to support small businesses. I've been talking to other towns who have implemented small business relief funds and trying to figure out how the town of Nantucket can do it. Been calling Keating's office and Markey's office and Julian's office to try to figure out how we can get funds into the hands of small businesses. Heard, I don't want to be negative, Nancy, but heard that around the country, close to 40% of small businesses are on the brink of going out of business in the next 30 days. So the next 30 days are really crucial to help support small businesses and get cash in their hands.
Such a tough spot for Cape and Islands, right? Because we've had this whole winter where we've been kind of, hibernating, waiting to come out and get the cash flow again. And now we can't do that. This could happen in July and August. We'd be really in trouble. So it's just there's really no good time for this at all. But there is some extra hurdles for the seasonality for Cape and Islands.
Right. And that's something the chamber is also launching a website. It should go live maybe today or tomorrow, called Keep the Rock Solid. And it's all about how we're one economy and one community, and ways that you can give and support our business community, and also ways that they can receive support at this time. So it's going to be laid out really nicely so you can easily see how you can get support or give support. I know the Community Foundation has an amazing fund set up for nonprofits, and we're hoping to use this site to help small businesses.
Anything else that, Julian, you want people on Nantucket to know about?
So this is a tremendously difficult time. And everyone knows that. You don't need me to tell that to you. I think that information is evolving, and as we get it, we're trying to share that as much as possible. Please rely on, if you go to senatorcyr.com, that's senatorcyr.com, we list every and all information we can get our hands on around the response to COVID-19. There's a substantial amount of small business information up there, and we continue to update it regularly. So I just want to encourage people to rely on that as a resource. And then if you're having problems or challenges with these programs, especially if you've applied and you've gotten stuck in some sort of bureaucratic morass, please reach out to my office. You can also reach out to Representative Hernandez's office. Sometimes we can help cut through the red tape. And thank you for putting this together, and it's something you've been doing for a while. And I think, the more information that we can share, the better. And just really urge people to take good care, make sure they are staying healthy, yes, from a physical perspective, and also their emotional health as well. And just to thank you for the opportunity, and let us know where we can help, and we're on it.
Thank you, Julian. Christy, any last words, last thoughts?
I just want to thank you for taking the time. I know I was on a call with you earlier today. It seems that you are on calls all day long. So thank you.
Yeah,
for
it's conference call and extrovert hell, right?
Yeah, so I really appreciate that. And a huge thank you to NCTV for putting this together. This is going to be translated into Spanish and Portuguese. And so pass it along to all your business owner friends in the community so we can get the information out to everybody.
Thank you both for all the work that you're doing. One thing that we all can agree on, that these are uncertain times, and the uncertainty can and fear can really take over. So the more information we can out there, the more we can hear from Dylan and Julian and Christy, it's really helpful. And we can't answer all the questions, but we can just keep trying and keep updating everyone. So thank you both.
Thank you. Take care.
Bye. Thank you.